What is going on, Raider Nation? Coaster here, and I'm just going to review and look back at the drafts of the Oakland Raiders. This is part one of the series where I'm going to start from 2009. That was my first year on YouTube. So, usually you cannot grade a draft the moment it happens. I know we like to. It kind of gets the itch off your back. Everyone wants to just talk about it. Just let it consume their thoughts. And then you kind of wait for the season, and then these guys finally play. But you can't grade a draft until 3 to 4 years after the draft happens. So I will go back and grade these draft classes. And then when I say we reach 2013, 2014, I'll sort of kind of give a progress report, but I can't give a grade officially. So that being said, I will start with 2009. In the first round, the Raiders selected Heyward-Bey out of Maryland. This was a very scrutinized pick. Even I was kind of like, not exactly happy, but it was expected. If anyone watched the draft on the NFL Network that year, Mike Mayock had Heyward-Bey as I think it was number 8 overall. He had that because that was a classic Al Davis type of move. He had first round potential. And I think he was projected to be drafted like 17th overall, 18th overall, or something like that. But the New York Giants wanted him, and fans were booing as a result in New York. So Heyward-Bey was drafted. He was the first wide receiver taken. People thought Michael Crabtree was the best guy available. Really, this pick, yeah, it sucks in the long term. This guy, he had a very good 2011, his third year in the league. He had a better season than Michael Crabtree, nearly 1,000 yards. Had some big play potential once Hugh Jackson learned how to use him. Unfortunately, he didn't have any stability. He fell out of place in 2012 because of the current coaching staff. That took over. And then he bounced around. I think he spent time with the Colts. He did land a job with the Steelers for a good handful of plays, but he's still in the league. I got to give credit where it's due, but this is a pick that didn't work out. Really, the pick that I wanted at the time, I thought B.J. Raji and Eugene Monroe. I didn't think wide receiver should have been the pick there, but I knew it wouldn't be Michael Crabtree because it didn't fit the numbers Al Davis wanted. He didn't have the wingspan, the range. He didn't have any of that. So back then, yeah, I thought a lineman would have been more important, defensive or offensive. But B.J. Raji might have not been a 4-3 system guy. So I give this pick a D- because he did have a better season than Crabtree in year 3, and he's still in the league. But unfortunately, from a Raiders standpoint, it didn't work out. Al Davis was being Al Davis. In round 2, the Raiders selected Michael Mitchell after trading down a little bit. This was also scrutinized by everybody. The biggest thing in that draft class, the experts had him as an undrafted free agent or a round 7 guy. There was no film, not even a photo on the guy. Nobody heard of him. So then, of course, YouTube was still fairly new, or fairly only a handful of years old. So everyone went to YouTube and started looking up the guy. And one of the tapes showed how he could be a hard-hitting safety, almost like the late Jack Tatum. He had that ability that you need that. Every defense needs a safety that can hit hard. That actually is one of the most important roles of the team. He was also an athlete, as you would expect. And Michael Mitchell, unfortunately, did not work out with the Raiders. He kind of saw time nickel. There were times he was at cover. He was just average. He wasn't special and great. But like the rest, he fell out of place with the coaching staffs that came later after Al Davis. So the bigger thing, though, is Michael Mitchell had success outside the Raiders. With the Carolina Panthers, he became very good. Ron Rivera's staff knew how to use him in 2013, and now he's with the Pittsburgh Steelers, even though he could be cap casualty soon. The Steelers actually signed him to like a 5-year deal or something. So Mitchell has proven to be good. It's just the Raiders didn't know how to use him right, and that's the biggest problem. So this pick goes in the books as an F because it didn't work out with the Raiders. But he's still in the league. That not for long. I know NFL sometimes stands for not for long, and for him, he's still in the league. So credit where credit's due. In round 3, the Raiders took Matt Shaughnessy, a defensive lineman. This pick was okay. He was a good rotation defensive lineman, pretty much what you'd expect out of a third-round pick. I I thought, unfortunately, he got hurt in his last year, and then he became a free agent and just kind of walked. I think he was with the Arizona Cardinals last. He's very close to being out of the league. He was released before the 2015 season, and he'll be fighting for a roster spot, most likely this fall, but I think he's going to be out of the league soon. From a Raiders standpoint, I thought he was a good contributor from where they took him. It wasn't great, nothing bad, so I'm going to say this goes in the books as a C plus in the Raiders. From a Raiders standpoint, I'll give it a C plus. What you'd expect in the third round? Nothing flashy, but someone who is at least serviceable. So in round 4, the Raiders took Louis Murphy out of Florida, and some people were arguably saying this was a better receiver than Darius Heyward-Bey. He was more productive in college. Heyward-Bey was an upside speed type of receiver out of Maryland. Of course, they were saying he drops hands and so on, but the Louis Murphy was a productive guy, captain, so on, or decent player at Florida. He had a great rookie year. He was burning the Steelers. He burned a couple teams, and he was remembered for 2 really nice games against the Bengals and Steelers, most in his rookie season. Bruce Gradkowski is the quarterback and all that in 2009. But then he fell off. He just didn't recover from an injury in 2010. I think he had that one play in week 1 against the Chargers, and somehow that should have been a touchdown. But then we're getting used to that rule where you got to hold on to the ball the whole way. And, they talk about things being a catch with Dez Bryant, but that catch again with Louis Murphy is really the one that sticks out in Raiders fans' minds. Murphy had a good rookie year, but unfortunately nothing was the same after that. And then he became just expendable once I think Hugh Jackson took over, and then after that there was really no room for him. So they traded him, got rid of him, fell out of place. And like the others, he's fighting for a roster spot. He's a fringe wide receiver, trying to stay in the league, and I'm not even sure if he still is. I give this pick a B minus because of what it did in the short term. It's just unfortunate that there was some instability with the Raiders and it didn't work out, but he was productive, at least for 1 year. So it wasn't all bad, just in the long term it didn't help. So B minus, nearly out of the league. Also, they were taken in the 4th round. I believe there were some trade downs and you pick up picks, so they took in the later 4th round Slade Norris, linebacker who was mostly on special teams. This was a bad pick. Didn't really do much. He's out of the league. In short, I'm going to say an F because it was a 4th round pick. Sometimes I expect more out of mid-round picks, but that didn't work out. Didn't go very well. Also, there were 2 6th round picks. The Raiders kind of traded up. I believe they traded up for one guy, and then the other was their regular 6th round picks. So the other was Striker Sulek, defensive lineman. Who's that guy? Well, he didn't even sign with the Raiders. The Raiders failed to sign him, and he never played a snap in the NFL. So I think he was briefly on a roster at the beginning of a camp, but not the Raiders. So that's an incomplete. I think Quentin Moses was the other one time the Raiders would cut an early pick, a third round pick. So that's an incomplete. Nothing to say there, but he's not in the league at all. And then there's Brandon Myers, the last pick of the draft. He was a decent blocking tight end for his first few years. And then in 2012, he picked up some nice garbage time stats. Had a lot of nice fantasy numbers if you're into that stuff. Carson Palmer had worked out pretty well. Myers, not really a receiving tight end as people make it out to be, but that year there was a lot of garbage time stats where he was able to pad it. So it earned him a contract, and he's still in the league. He was with the New York Giants at one point. I forget where else he's bounced, but even in his first year with the Giants, he was a decent complementary tight end. So Myers, for where they took him, I'm going to say an A minus. As a blocking tight end, a 6th round pick is what you'd expect. He was okay as a blocker, and then he had a nice year at the very end. So the last pick was probably the better pick, and that's one of the more sad parts about it. Other guys that were taken, or that were undrafted, Desmond Bryant, not Dez Bryant, but Desmond, he was a serviceable defensive lineman for them. That was a really good pickup because he stayed on the roster for some time, and then he earned a decent deal with Cleveland before some ugly arrests and stuff. But Desmond Bryant was the other decent pick. But unfortunately, when we look at this class as a whole, nobody stayed beyond their rookie contract. And that means that they just, well, with the exception of Brandon Myers, they just weren't good enough by the time it was their contract year. Some guys were traded, some guys were just released, they were expendable. So overall, this class, I give it a D minus. D minus, I think this class just was not what we were hoping for, and fortunately on the field it didn't work out. We can talk about one of many classes with busts and so on. Guys that are still in the league, but just from a Raiders standpoint, this was the third to last Al Davis draft class. So it didn't work out. It is what it is. In the hindsight card, we could talk about wanting Mike Wallace. We could talk about other wide receivers like Hakeem Nicks, who was good for a year or two. There was a lot of other players that obviously were passed on and so on. I can't name them all, but that's some of the handful that go in the regret tracker. Jeremy Maclin proved to be productive. I don't think he would have been a fit for the Raiders, but I know he was another one that was solid. It is ironic the Raiders have Michael Crabtree today, but he's there. He's a number two. When you draft a guy in the first round, he needs to be a number one wide receiver. And I think right now Crabtree is a decent number two. Nothing more than that. So it is where it's working out okay now in free agency, but this class gets a D minus in my books overall. Let me know what you all have on this class, and I'll talk about 2010 next. We'll see you guys later.